The traffic flower actress that I made famous fell in love with a poor guy. She told me that she wanted to quit the entertainment circle and become a homemaker for that man. I advised her to break up and focus on her career, and she agreed. Unexpectedly, she was just putting on a show for me. In private, she was being manipulated by that poor guy with PUA tactics. She just doesn't want to lose you, her cash cow, he said. Later, she was instigated by the poor guy to play the victim online and claimed that I was exploiting her. The overwhelming online abuse was so suffocating that I committed suicide. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the traffic flower actress who was still bent on quitting the circle right in front of me. I readily said, "Then go ahead and quit. Loving someone and making sacrifices for them isn't a big deal." "Sonia, I'm planning to quit the entertainment circle," said Cece, wringing her hands in front of me. I looked at her without changing my expression and asked, "Give me a reason?" I've met someone who loves me deeply, and I love him too. He said he'll work hard to earn money and support me, and I can just be a full-time housewife at home." I felt a bit dazed. In my previous life, Cece had told me the same thing. I'm a top agent at Jiangsha Entertainment Company, and Cece is the traffic flower actress that I made famous. In my previous life, during the peak of her career, she told me that she wanted to quit the circle. As her agent, I couldn't bear to see her ruin her own future like that. I had a heart-to-heart talk with her for a long time and tried to persuade her over and over again. Cece, who had never been in a relationship before, fell head over heels in love like that. Little did she know that it was a scam from start to finish. I found out that the man she fell in love with was a poor guy pretending to be rich, and he not only wanted to cheat her out of money but also take advantage of her physically. That man created an image of being a die-hard fan of Cece, borrowing money from loan sharks to do all kinds of fan support activities like picking her up at the airport and giving her gifts. Cece, who had never been in a relationship before, fell head over heels in love like that. Little did she know that it was a scam from start to finish. Asking Cece to quit the circle was just to make her fade out of the public eye so that it would be easier to trick her into handing over all her money. The results of the later investigation shocked me even more. That man actually had a child being raised in the countryside, and his parents had no ability to work. If Cece really went with him, she would have to be a free nanny. Just when I was thinking about having another talk with Cece, something happened. Cece cried to her fans on Weibo that I was exploiting the artists under me and even acting as a pimp. She made it sound so convincing that Cece's fans started to abuse me online one after another. They cursed me for being inhumane and even went to the official Weibo account of the company to scold the company for being unscrupulous. Under the pressure of public opinion, the company removed me from my position. All the artists under me were assigned to others. I became penniless, but Cece's fans still didn't let me go. They exposed my address, my family members, and even photoshopped some disgusting pictures of me and cursed me, wondering why I didn't die quickly. I found Cece and asked her why she did this. She said, "Sonia, you're not doing this for my good at all. You just regard me as your cash cow." I didn't expect that when she promised me to break up back then. It was just for show. In private, she thought that I was stopping her from finding true love. She also thought that I only regarded her as a cash cow. If I really regarded her as a cash cow, I would have made her accompany clients at dinners and act in lousy scripts like other agents long ago. How could I have always helped her turn down those dinner invitations and gone to great lengths to get good resources for her? Later, under the increasingly fierce online abuse from Cece's fans, I was so suffocated that I chose to commit suicide. Perhaps because I was unwilling to accept it, I was reincarnated. I was reborn at a time when everything could still be salvaged. I looked up at Cece and said readily, "Then go ahead and quit. I respect your choice. Loving someone and making sacrifices for them isn't a big deal." Cece's face was full of joy. "Thank you, Sonia, for understanding. Then I won't disturb you for now." "Okay. You can go back first. I'll handle the contract termination procedures for you." Watching Cece's back as she walked out, I sneered. "No need to thank me. This is just the beginning of your misfortunes, Cece. Having a second chance at life, I will definitely respect other people's destinies and definitely not interfere too much. As long as I don't meddle in other people's business, I won't take the blame for others. After seeing Cece off, I started to prepare for terminating her contract. Coincidentally, Cece's contract was about to expire, so it was just the right time to terminate it. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door of my office. Come in. The door was pushed open, and a girl I didn't recognize came in. She was good-looking, with a natural beauty, but a bit reserved and timid. I couldn't help wondering if she was an artist under someone else in the company. Why didn't I have any impression of her? Are you an artist in the company? Hello, Sonia. I'm Sue, an artist under Jenny. I just heard that Cece is going to terminate her contract. Can I follow you, Sonia? I couldn't help but smile. Cece was really impatient. She spread the news of the contract termination so quickly. I took another look at Sue in front of me. When did Jenny sign such a good-looking talent? She didn't even manage to make her famous and yet made her want to jump ship and follow me? Everyone in the company knows that Jenny and I don't get along. Aren't you afraid of offending both sides by coming to me so blatantly? Sue shook her head and smiled bitterly. I don't have any other choice. Before, Jenny asked me to accompany clients at dinners, and I refused. In Jenny's eyes, I'm already a discard. Then aren't you afraid that I'll also make you do that if you come to me? You won't. I'm in the same batch of trainees as Cece. She said in the group that you never let her accompany clients at dinners. I chuckled softly. So Cece, also knew that I was good to her. Then how could she have the heart to slander me like that in her previous life? Sue, I can take you over from Jenny, but you have to promise not to fall in love. Sue excitedly took a step forward. Thank you, Sonia. I know that for an idol, falling in love means no future in terms of career. It seems that she's a sensible one. Making money is much more appealing than falling in love. As for Cece, I just hate myself for choosing this love-struck fool back then. And I even lost everything because of her. After that day, I became busy. On one hand, I was handling the contract termination procedures for Cece, and on the other hand, I was taking Sue over from Jenny. For this, Jenny even mocked me. I say, Sonia, were you so shocked by Cece's contract termination that you're acting like this? Sue isn't a good talent at all. She's a hopeless case. I sneered. You don't need to worry about that, old lady. I think Sue is a good talent. If you couldn't make her famous, don't blame others. Jenny immediately got angry. Humph, if you want her, then take her. I'll wait and see how you make her famous. Today happened to be the day to sign the contract termination contract with Cece. After dealing with Sue's matter, I rushed to another meeting room in a hurry. On my way there, my steps were surprisingly light. I was finally going to get rid of Cece, this big trouble. Next, I would just wait and see how she dug her own grave. If the timing was right, I wouldn't mind setting a few more obstacles for her. After all, in my previous life, she had hurt me badly. I pushed open the door of the meeting room. Cece was already waiting inside. I sat down opposite Cece and pushed the contract termination contract over to her. This is the contract termination contract. Take a look first. Since the contract we signed before is about to expire anyway, the company won't hold you accountable for the liquidated damages. But there's one thing I need to remind you of. When we signed the contract 5 years ago, we also signed a non-compete agreement. You can't sign with other companies within 2 years after terminating the contract with Jiangsha Entertainment. But I believe this won't have much impact on you. After all, you're planning to go back and be a full-time housewife. I sincerely wish you well, Cece. Wish you a happy life stepping into the fire. This is all the karma you chose for yourself, Cece. To my surprise, after hearing about the non-compete agreement, Cece actually hesitated. I thought she loved that man so deeply that she would sign without hesitation. I quietly watched Cece's expression change again and again, struggling, hesitating. After a long while, I heard Cece's voice as soft as a mosquito. Sonia, can I not terminate the contract? I snorted. Cece, are you kidding me? It's not like you can terminate it or not as you please. Sonia, Cece sitting opposite me hemmed and hawed for a long time but couldn't come up with a proper reason. Cece, we're all adults. We should be responsible for what we've said. Besides, it was you who told me you wanted to terminate the contract at first, wasn't it? Just sign it quickly. I have other things to do and don't have much time for you. I pushed the termination contract a little closer to Cece again. Under the pressure of my gaze, Cece didn't say anything else and picked up the pen to sign her name. Watching the procedures completed, I stood up and looked at Cece, who was sitting there in a daze. Cece, you're free from today on. You're no longer an artist under Jiangsha Entertainment Company. You're just yourself. Wish you a happy wedding in advance. After saying that, I didn't pay any more attention to Cece and walked out of the meeting room. I had someone announce Cece's withdrawal from the entertainment circle online, and it quickly sparked a heated discussion among a large number of netizens. Most of them were lamenting that Cece was getting married at a young age and choosing to return to family life early to take care of her husband and children. There were also some conspiracy theories wondering if Cece had some conflicts with the company, which was why she terminated the contract. I quickly scanned the comments of the netizens. Seeing that there were no remarks attacking the company, I felt relieved and then turned to deal with other things. Because of Cece's sudden contract termination, many resources that were originally meant for her became vacant. After assessing Sue's professional abilities, I let her take over Cece's resources. In the following months, I focused on cultivating Sue, taking her to various announcements, to film sets for auditions, and to variety shows to increase her exposure. Occasionally, when I met Jenny in the elevator, she still had a mocking look on her face. Sonia, you're working so hard to promote Sue. Are you trying to make her the next Cece? I stared at Jenny and said calmly, so what if I am? I can not only make her the next Cece but also make Sue even more famous than Cece. Just then, the elevator reached the floor. Stepping out of the elevator door, I turned around and said, Jenny, let's wait and see. Fortunately, Sue didn't let my expectations down. After various announcements and variety shows were broadcast, Sue's surprisingly good performance made her gain fans rapidly and become famous overnight. In just a few days, the number of followers on Sue's Weibo account, which originally only had tens of thousands of fake followers, soared to millions. All kinds of fan clubs sprang up like mushrooms after rain. Just when I was extremely busy, Cece came to me. I invited her to meet at the coffee shop downstairs of the company, simply wanting to see what she had made of herself. Although I could guess what had happened, I was still shocked when I saw Cece again. The once delicate, bright and flamboyant Cece was almost unrecognizable after half a year. Now, although she was obviously dressed up, she still couldn't hide the vicissitudes and haggardness on her face. It seemed that she had suffered a lot. Serves her right. As soon as I sat down, Cece grabbed my hand and said, Sonia, please save me. I regret getting married and I want to divorce him. Oh? She regretted it in just half a year? What's the matter? Did you have a conflict with him? Oh dear. It's normal for you two to have some friction in life. You shouldn't always talk about divorce. Cece kept shaking her head and grabbed my hand tighter and tighter. As she spoke, she began to sob. From her story, I learned that the poor guy Leo showed his true colors after getting the marriage certificate. The wedding house he showed her before marriage was rented. The ring was a fake one bought for 9.9 yuan on Pinduoduo, and the luxury car that picked her up in the early days was also rented. Cece was both angry and helpless. However, since she had already got the certificate and Leo brainwashed her, saying that everything he did was just because he loved her, she believed it and brought him back to the small apartment she bought. She thought that the two of them could live a good life if they worked hard, but the good times didn't last long. Cece thought Leo would go to work hard to earn money to support the family. Who would have thought that Leo would go gambling and get drunk out a few months ago? He beat Cece for the first time when he was drunk. But the next day, when Leo knelt in front of Cece and slapped himself, saying that he wouldn't do it again, Cece believed him again. Unfortunately, some time ago, the usurers who came to collect debts came to the door and Cece had a big fight with Leo. Leo not only hit her again but also forced Cece to hand over all her savings to pay off his usury. Hearing this, I couldn't help but applaud in my heart. Serves her right. This is the end of being a love brain. In the last life, you made me block the disaster for you. In this life, you, Cece, have to bear it yourself. I looked at the sobbing Cece in front of me and smiled without saying a word. Cece, this is just the beginning. When that poor guy takes you back to the countryside, that will be a bolt from the blue. The feeling of being a mother without pain should be good. Cece looked at me with teary eyes and said, Sonia, please help me. Only you can save me. I slowly pulled my hand out of hers and said, Cece, it's not that I don't want to help you. I can't help you. This was all your own choice. Since you chose to marry Leo, you must have loved him at the beginning. You go back and have a good talk with Leo and pay off the debt and live a good life. I took a sip of coffee to moisten my throat and continued to PUA Cece. Besides, Cece, a woman will be looked down upon for getting divorced. You can live a good life with Leo if you can. Maybe he hit you just because he was under too much pressure, not because he didn't love you. After fooling Cece and sending her back to the taxi, I stood outside the coffee shop for a long time. Looking at the people coming and going in front of me, I couldn't help sighing that it's good to be alive. After not meddling in other people's business and respecting the fate of others, even the air is fresh. Suddenly, I began to look forward to how Leo would treat Cece next. To be honest, the worse she lives, the happier I am. Sue, I may not have time to accompany you to the event tonight. Can Xiaojin accompany you? I looked at Sue, who was sitting quietly on the sofa beside me, and said worriedly. Now, with her own efforts and the resources of the company, Sue has gradually reached the height that Cece once had. And Sue is indeed a good seedling who was delayed by Jenny as I expected. Her professional abilities such as singing, dancing, and acting are almost full marks. However, it was the broadcast of a costume drama that made Sue become extremely popular. As soon as this costume drama was broadcast, it became a huge hit, and then came the huge attention of the audience to the actors. Although Sue played the vicious female second lead, she was unexpectedly likable. The public and the drama fans' impression of her was so good that it even faintly surpassed that of the female lead. Speaking of which, I had thought about asking Cece to audition for this drama at that time. But she refused this script on the grounds that the vicious character of the female second lead was not outstanding and would be scolded by the audience after filming, so this script had been shelved here. That day, when I asked Sue to choose a script, I don't know how she took a fancy to this script and took the initiative to tell me that she wanted to try this female second lead. So I took Sue to the audition, and after watching Sue's audition, the director immediately decided that she would play the female second lead. I can go by myself, Sonia. It's just walking the red carpet. Sue's soft voice interrupted my thoughts. Well, Xiaojin is your assistant and it's appropriate for her to go with you. Before I could finish my words, I was interrupted by Xiaojin, who pushed the door in a hurry and said, Sonia, look at your phone. Something happened. My eyebrows jumped and I quickly picked up my phone and opened Weibo. What caught my eye was the push of hot search entries. #Cece who retired from the circle for 1 year talks about the reason for her retirement at that time. #Sue climbed the gold master and squeezed out the popular little flower. #, Sonia forcibly terminated the contract because she was dissatisfied with the artist Cece. Each entry was followed by a big explosive word. Click on any entry at random and the first one was a short essay posted by Cece on her registered private account. First, she cried that she couldn't sign with other companies because of the non-compete agreement after being terminated, so she chose to retire from the circle. In fact, she was very reluctant to leave the stage. Then she began to accuse me, the agent, of being dissatisfied with her just because she planned to get married, so she forcibly terminated her contract. She also pointed out early on that many of Sue's announcements and activities in the past year were her former resources. Especially the costume drama that Sue starred in. she said that she had originally accepted that costume drama before retiring from the circle. As soon as this short essay came out, it was immediately forwarded by the marketing accounts who were surfing the internet at 5G speed. Cece's former fans, just like in the last life, picked up their keyboards and began to scold. I knew it. How could Cece retire from the circle during the rising period of her career? It turns out that it was all forced by the unscrupulous company and the unscrupulous agent. I feel sorry for my Cece. Cece, don't be afraid. We are all your backers. Sonia is so disgusting. What's wrong with Cece wanting to get married at her age? That's right. In her eyes, our Cece is just a cash cow. She just wanted to get rid of Cece when she thought Cece was going to get married. I said why a certain family's momentum has been so strong in the past year. It turns out that they got up by climbing the gold master and going through the back door to grab resources. I'm really disgusted. Grabbing resources is really shameless. Sue's fans were not easy to deal with either, and the comments scolding her were quickly washed away by her fans. Bah, what kind of has-been actress? Don't come near, take away my Sue. I won't make an appointment. All of Sue's resources were obtained fairly. Don't spread rumors, your idol is not in the circle anymore. Why are you still arguing? Cut. If you have the ability, tell your idol not to get married. What do you mean by saying that Sue grabbed resources? I knew that Cece in this life would not be peaceful. It seems that she was instigated by Leo to cause trouble again. However, in this life, with the powerful fighting force of Sue's fans, the direction of public opinion is no longer in her hands. My phone vibrated. It was Cece calling. After sending Xiaojin and Sue out, I answered the phone and said, Cece, what do you mean? I think I treated you well during the 5 years I took you. Sorry, Sonia. I'm really desperate. Cece's crying voice came from the other end of the phone. I really need money now. I only need 5 million. I will delete the post as soon as the money arrives. Oh, this is blackmail. When I spoke again, my voice became a little cold. Cece, although I don't know what happened to you and you need so much money, I can tell you that neither the company nor I will give you this money. Besides, spreading rumors on the internet and making blackmail calls are all illegal. Cece, I can send you to prison at any time. You'd better delete the post immediately. I said that we should part on good terms and not make things too ugly. Cece on the other end seemed to be irritated and said, Leo was right. You just found my replacement. That's why you agreed to terminate my contract so readily. I didn't earn less for Jiangxia Entertainment in those 5 years. What's wrong with giving me 5 million as compensation? Sonia, I didn't want to listen to Cece's incompetent rage anymore and hung up the phone directly. It seems that she has been brainwashed by Leo to the point of madness. Then she should taste the taste of being cyberbullied. After hanging up Cece's phone, I asked someone to check her recent situation. It turned out that Leo coaxed and tricked her into going back to the countryside. After seeing the child and knowing that the child's father was Leo, Cece broke down. She cried and wanted to leave and get a divorce. How could Leo let the free babysitter he had finally tricked go, and immediately became violent? The next day, he used both hard and soft tactics and didn't know what kind of magic potion he used to coax Cece. Cece endured for a month and worked as a free babysitter at Leo's house for a month. Because of Leo's and other domestic violence, she firmly demanded a divorce. Leo didn't pretend anymore and directly said, divorce? Okay, give me 5 million as compensation. But where did Cece get the money? She had already used all her money to pay off Leo's debts. What? No money? If you don't have money, you can go to your company to ask for it. I wanted to say you were stupid at the beginning. You earned a lot for your company in those years. You're a real fool if you don't ask for any compensation. After reading the investigation records, I couldn't help sighing that Cece was really patient. She could even accept raising someone else's child. She was really hopelessly in love. Then I contacted the public relations department of the company and asked them to deal with Cece's post as soon as possible. And I gave them 2 recordings. One was the recording I made when Cece said she wanted to retire from the circle. The other was the recording of the blackmail call from Cece just now. At that time, I just thought it was better to be prepared and didn't expect it to really come in handy. Soon, the official Weibo of Jiangxia Entertainment updated a statement with evidence and at Cece's private account. If she continued to spread rumors and harass and blackmail the company on the internet, the legal department would sue her. As soon as the statement came out, the wind direction changed very quickly. The marketing accounts that initially spoke for Cece all shut up and shrank back. Even Cece's fans stopped typing for a while. They couldn't believe that the person they really supported was just using them as guns. For a while, Sue's fans and the fans of the artists under Jiangxia Entertainment occupied Cece's comment area. In this life, the person who was cyberbullied is no longer me. It's the culprit who cyberbullied me in the last life, Cece. I hope she can bear the scolding of netizens and won't regret posting that post. I quietly added fuel to the fire and secretly spread the information about Cece's husband. Netizens' noses are sharper than dogs. They smelled the melon and began to dig deeper. In just a few days, the whole network knew that Cece married a poor, gambling alcoholic husband. And her husband was actually divorced and had a child in the countryside. So, there were more people mocking her. Haha, how blind is this girl to fall in love with such a man? Being a mother without pain is okay? She also found her own happiness? She was sold and still counted the money for others. I'm really speechless. This is the first time I've seen such a serious collapse. I apologize for my impulse a few days ago. I deserve to die. I thought she was really bullied and I immediately picked up the keyboard to help her. The statement of Jiangxia Entertainment really slapped me in the face. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. She didn't even think about her fans when she was at the rising stage of her career and insisted on retiring from the circle. In the end, she still used us as guns. Thanks to this hot search topic, more people took notice of Sue. Quite a number of brands and directors extended olive branches to her. I became busy again, occupied with screening scripts and endorsements for her. I simply didn't have time to pay attention to the follow-up development of Cece's situation. On this day, I was accompanying Sue outside for the drama promotion. Looking at Sue, who was gradually growing and standing higher and higher, I couldn't help sighing in my heart. Sue is really like a pearl covered with dust. Now that the dust has dissipated, she is shining brighter and brighter. Just at that moment, something unexpected happened. On the stage, Sue and several other artists had just finished the promotion and were walking towards the steps where I was. Suddenly, a black figure rushed out from the crowd and headed straight for Sue. Looking at what the person was holding in his hand, it was a knife. My pupils contracted. I wanted to shout for Sue to avoid it, but it was already a step too late. Just when that person was about to stab Sue, she was pulled back. It was Ryan, the second male lead, walking beside Sue, who stepped forward bravely and blocked Sue, taking the stab for her. Soon, the surrounding security guards rushed over and subdued the assailant. I went forward to take a look and was shocked to find that it was Cece. She, who was being pinned down by the security guards, was still muttering, "Kill you, you little bitch. Clearly all of this should belong to me. I shook my head. She's really gone crazy. I turned around and accompanied Sue to send Ryan, who had blocked the knife for her, to the hospital. The Maizue Xian in Gangchang was so expensive that the supplier who paid the bill almost turned black with anger. But it happened to be the place where Silas went most often. Were you terribly frightened? I looked at Sue, who was standing aside with her head hanging down. Sue rushed over and hugged me. Sonia, I didn't expect that Cece hated me so much. I patted her on the back and comforted her. It's okay. It's not your fault. She chose to give up her career for love on her own. You chose to come to me to strive for resources for yourself. It's just a coincidence. It's not your fault. Don't doubt yourself and don't blame yourself either. After Ryan had his wound bandaged, I sent Sue and Ryan back to their respective residences. Then I rushed to the police station in a hurry. It wasn't appropriate for the two artists to show up for taking the statement, so I, as the agent, had to make the trip. In the police station, Cece I saw was even more haggard than when I saw her half a year ago. If I hadn't known her for so many years, I wouldn't have dared to associate this crazy woman in front of me with the once bright and flamboyant female star Cece. Cece, who had been sitting quietly at first, got excited when she saw me and tried to get up and rush towards me but was held back. She shouted, "Sonia, you always knew it, didn't you? You knew that Leo was no good and you didn't even plan to help me, did you? You watched me say that I would marry him. Why didn't you even try to persuade me? My whole life has been ruined because of Leo. But it doesn't matter. He's dead. He's dead. Ha ha ha." I took a step back in fright. What did Cece mean by "he's dead"? I looked at the policeman beside me in confusion. Later I learned from the policeman that Cece had fed Leo sleeping pills when he came home drunk and then loosened the connection of the gas tank at home, creating a gas leak. Leo died in a gas leak like that. And what awaited Cece next was the trial of the law. After finishing taking the statement and coming out, I turned around and looked at the lifeless Cece. I laughed at myself. You asked me why I didn't help you. But in my previous life I did try to help you. And what did I get in return? All I got was your ingratitude. The ending in this life is what you deserve. Cece's act of attacking someone in public was secretly photographed and posted online. Some sharp-eyed people recognized that it was Cece and then it spread quickly. The intense discussion among netizens made the topic shoot straight to the top of the hot search list. The comments were all scolding Cece for being as vicious as a snake or a scorpion and daring to attack someone with a knife in the street. Oh my God. She's so scary. She was really aiming at Sue's face. Did you see the look in her eyes? I just paused the video and it looked like she wanted to swallow Sue alive. Is she really Cece? I can hardly recognize her in the video. Damn. Fortunately, Ryan pulled Sue. Otherwise, Sue's face would have been ruined today. Thank you, Ryan, for saving the beauty. Woo woo woo. Good heavens. Didn't any of the security guards at the scene notice that Cece had brought a knife in? Are they just useless? After seeing the police notice that she has been detained, netizens all exclaimed that it was so satisfying. Great. This kind of person should be locked up for 10 or 8 years to avoid coming out to harm others. She's so crazy. She must be severely punished. I support the comment above. However, some netizens started shipping strange couples after watching that video. Well, am I the only one who thinks there's some chemistry between Ryan and Sue? Upstairs, they just played the second couple in the last ancient costume drama. How could there be no chemistry? No, I mean the chemistry in real life. No way. Sue said that falling in love has no future for her career. I think the way Ryan looks at Sue is really affectionate. Me too. Upstairs. And when Cece rushed over with the knife, it seemed that Ryan's whole body tensed up. Well, I think Ryan has a one-sided crush and has no hope. I heard that Sue's agent doesn't allow her to have a relationship. Alas, it's understandable. Who can bear it if just after cultivating an artist, she wants to quit the circle to get married and take care of her husband and children because of a relationship? I thought about it. It wouldn't be a bad thing if Sue's romantic partner was Ryan. Not allowing her to fall in love was just because I was afraid that she would be like Cece, falling so deeply in love that she couldn't be pulled back. But if it was a boy with good character like Ryan, it would be completely okay. In order to prove that I'm not a harsh agent, after asking Sue if she minded going on a love variety show and getting a reply that she didn't mind, I coordinated with Ryan's agent and sent them both to be guests on the love variety show. On the night before the recording, Sue assured me earnestly, "Sonia, don't worry. I won't fall in love. I know it must be that this variety show offers a lot of money and you couldn't refuse it." What on earth have I become in Sue's eyes? I tactfully said, "Actually, I won't interfere if you fall in love. Just give it a try if you like someone. As long as you don't fall for some worthless guys. For example, someone like Ryan is quite good. I heard that he's also coming to this show." After this love variety show was broadcast, Sue and Ryan quickly became the most popular national couple. Netizens went crazy about shipping them, shouting every day to bring the marriage registration office here and let them get married on the spot. In the end, as expected, they held hands successfully, Then even better news came, Sue was nominated for the Best Supporting Actress at the 100 Flowers Awards. On the day of the awards ceremony, I was sitting in the audience watching Sue giving her speech on the stage and raised an eyebrow at Jenny beside me. See? I told you. If you can't make an artist famous, don't blame others. Doubt yourself more. And stop taking new artists to accompany clients at dinners. Don't waste these good talents. Good resources don't necessarily have to be obtained by accompanying clients at dinners. Jenny retorted rudely, look at how smug you are. It's just winning the Supporting Actress Award at the 100 Flowers Awards. It's nothing much yet. I smiled lightly. She will stand higher and higher. After Sue, this pearl covered with dust was discovered and the dust was wiped off, she will only shine brighter and brighter until she amazes the whole world. Just then, I heard Sue's voice coming from the stage. I also want to thank my agent, Sonia. Without her, there would be no me today. Sonia is Sue's dream maker. I'm not really a dream maker. It's just that Sue is hardworking and sensible enough herself, having a second chance at life. I'm quite satisfied with this ending. Indeed, one should let go of the urge to help others and respect others' destinies. Just as the saying goes, if you don't meddle in other people's business, you won't have to take the blame for others. Sue's side story. Sonia is Sue's dream maker. Holding the trophy for the Best Supporting Actress in my hand, I said this while looking at Sonia in the audience. When I worked hard and won the first place among the trainees and was noticed by Jenny, I thought that my journey to fulfill my dream had begun. I thought that I could also shine on my own stage like the elder brothers and sisters on TV when I was a child. I never thought that being signed by Jenny was just the beginning of my dream being shattered. When Jenny took me to accompany clients at dinners for the first time, I understood. She signed me just because I had a good-looking appearance and was very suitable to be a tool for her to negotiate resources at the dinner table. I felt that this was completely deviated from my dream. I wanted to perform on the stage or act on the film set. Instead of smiling and flattering those pot-bellied men at the full table and having to endure their occasional groping. When Jenny asked me to accompany her to dinners again, I refused. Her originally gentle expression turned hideous. I heard her say, Sue, artists who don't obey the arrangements will never have a chance to succeed. At that moment, I truly heard the sound of my dream shattering. The adult world is really dark. If you don't have connections, resources, and don't obey the arrangements, you really have no way out. I was thus shelved by Jenny as a discard for several years. When I saw in the trainee group that Cece said she was going to terminate her contract, I thought, how nice it would be if I had resources like Cece and such a good agent as Sonia. I wanted to fight for it. My heart with the dream started beating again. It drove me to knock on Sonia's office door. When I went in, Sonia's intimidating gaze made me instantly have the thought of backing off. But that heart with the dream beat again, and I summoned up my courage to say that I wanted to jump ship from Jenny and follow her. Surprisingly smoothly, Sonia agreed. There was just one requirement, not to fall in love. I thought to myself, how can falling in love be as good as making money and fulfilling my dream? In this way, Sonia took me on my journey to fulfill my dream. I could also have announcements, variety shows to film, and even choose my own scripts. When Sonia asked me to choose my own script, I privately picked one that I liked very much. To my surprise, Sonia agreed without hesitation. She immediately took me to the audition and also encouraged me to perform well. Of course, since Sonia was so good to me, I mustn't let her down. Ryan's sudden show of affection in the crew made me a bit scared. He would act with me, teach me how to get into the role. Sometimes when I was in a bad state and couldn't get into the role and was called, cut, he wasn't impatient either. Privately, we would occasionally have dinner together and share useful little things. I didn't dislike him. I hoped that we could just get along as friends. I couldn't break the promise I made to Sonia. I promised Sonia that I wouldn't fall in love and that making money was the top priority. But after he confessed his feelings to me, I knew that it would be hard for us to be just friends. During the drama promotion, when Ryan blocked the knife for me, I admitted that I was moved. But I still didn't want to break the promise I made to Sonia. I didn't expect that Sonia would let me go on a love variety show. I thought it was because the variety show offered a lot of money and Sonia couldn't refuse it, so she agreed. Who knew that Sonia would tell me that she didn't want me to fall in love just because she was afraid that I would fall for some worthless guys. I guess that she was afraid that I would follow in Cece's footsteps. Later on the Love variety show, I accepted Ryan's pursuit, and we became the first pair of guests to successfully hold hands on this variety show. However, there was no prize for being the first. Later, at the speech for receiving the 100 Flowers Awards, I finally said the words that I had always wanted to say to Sonia. I'm really grateful to her for mending my broken dream. I also truly realized my own dream. I have a thriving career and the people I love and who love me. The end. On the eve of the wedding, I accidentally saw Luciano's mobile phone. He sent a video of me walking with crutches to a group chat. Guys who can understand me, every time I see her limping, I feel like vomiting. If I had known that I would have to spend my whole life with someone I don't love, I would rather have been the one who had my limb amputated back then. I really want to run away from this wedding. In the next second, I went back to the moment of the car accident. As Luciano wished, I didn't save him this time. Instead, he lost one of his legs and became blind. When Luciano went to take a shower, his mobile phone was vibrating crazily. The moment I picked up the phone, I accidentally saw the messages on the screen. Why don't we just go out for a drink and get drunk? Then tomorrow's wedding naturally won't be able to take place. Or just disappear. Come back in a month. Uncle and Aunt Shirley won't blame you. You've already taken care of Nina for 3 years. You can't waste your whole life on her. At worst, just give her family more money as compensation. Pretending to have amnesia would work too. I stood there in a daze, my hands shaking. I couldn't believe that the person I had loved for 10 years, while I was nervously, apprehensively, and hopefully looking forward to the wedding, was actually planning to run away from it. Every time I scrolled through a page of the chat records, my heart sank a little deeper. Guys, who can understand me? Every time I see her limping, I feel like vomiting. If I had known that I would have to spend my whole life with someone I don't love, I would rather have been the one who had my limb amputated back then. If it weren't for the fact that Nina's family's company was still somewhat valuable, I wouldn't have endured it for so long. Every line was filled with his disgust for me. He also sent the video of me walking with crutches to the group chat with his childhood friends. In the video, my left leg was empty. I had my left leg amputated completely below the knee. 3 years ago when the car accident happened, I didn't hesitate to throw myself towards Luciano. I blocked most of the impact for him and thus lost my left leg. I was a dancer, but I lost my leg. I gave up on myself and was once in an extremely broken state, but I remembered that Luciano's eyes were full of heartache back then. He gently picked me up horizontally and patiently accompanied me to practice again and again. He promised me word by word beside my ear, Nina, don't give up. I'll always be with you. If you can't walk for the rest of your life, then I'll be your legs for the rest of my life. But the chat records in front of me slapped me hard in the face. The video that he had specially taken to encourage me had become the laughingstock for them to ridicule me. The way I tried hard to walk looked ridiculously funny in his eyes. When I was sobbing uncontrollably, Luciano pushed the door open and came in. Nina, what's wrong? Seeing my face covered with tears, Luciano's voice became obviously nervous. He gently kissed my forehead. Are you too nervous because of tomorrow's wedding? Does my Nina have pre-wedding jitters? I silently turned my head away and bit my lip tightly. When Luciano saw me avoiding him, he subconsciously wanted to hug me, but when he saw the phone interface, his face suddenly turned pale. He snatched the phone away, his eyes full of panic. I tried my best to calm down my emotions, but I still couldn't stop shaking all over. Facing my repeated questioning, Luciano couldn't say a word. After a long while, he finally stopped pretending and completely changed his face. Putting away his false affection, he roared at me, "What do you know? Do you know how I've lived these past 3 years? Every time we had a gathering, others all brought their beautiful girlfriends, but only I was always alone. How many people talked about me behind my back, but my girlfriend is a cripple. I also want to experience the happiness of normal people. Every word from Luciano was like a sharp blade, stabbing at me without hesitation, torturing my heart bit by bit, and every word was like a stab to my heart. The way he looked at me was full of pity and sarcasm. It seemed that the tenderness of these 3 years was all the charity he gave me out of his kindness. If I could, I wish you had never saved me. My fingernails had already dug into my palms. At that moment, I didn't seem to know which hurt more. A burning sense of suffocation swept over my mind. I just felt my ears buzzing and my mind went blank. Everything around me seemed to have lost its sound. And the next second, the scene in front of me changed. It was no longer the apartment where Luciano and I had lived for 3 years, instead, it was in the back seat of a car. It was the day when Luciano and I went back to the university to get our graduation certificates. There was a loud bang, the vehicle turning left in front collided with a speeding oil tanker. Our car was rear-ended, and I was hit hard on my back, and this time, as Luciano wished, I didn't throw myself towards him without hesitation. In the last second before I lost consciousness, I saw Luciano stuck in his seat. I had a very long dream. In the dream, I put on a prosthetic limb, wearing a pure white wedding dress. I walked slowly onto the wedding stage. I was full of joy, waiting for my prince. But in the next second, on the big screen that was supposed to show the sweet life of Luciano and me, it suddenly showed me giving up on myself and crying bitterly. Everyone was pointing and talking, and my groom also took the opportunity to hold another girl's hand. He smiled and said, "Nina, forgive me. I really can't spend my whole life with someone I don't love. I can give you a lot of money, but I can't continue to take care of you. The person I've always loved is only Rosie." I was left at the wedding scene, and everyone's eyes looking at me were full of pity. I was like a clown abandoned by the whole world. I had never hated someone so much as at this moment. The overwhelming hatred was about to engulf me. I stumbled around like a madwoman. Then the scene changed and I stood on the top floor of a hotel. The hem of my white wedding dress fluttered in the wind. Like a butterfly, I spread my wings. All I could hear was my mother's shrill cry. When I woke up in the hospital, Luciano was already in the emergency room. I was stunned for a moment, unable to believe that I had really come back. I had thought it was just a dream. But when I pinched the flesh on my left leg, I felt the most real pain. I was overjoyed inside and my tears burst out instantly. My mother hugged me in her arms with heartache, and her warm tears wet my clothes. "Nina, you almost scared me to death." I could tell that my mother's voice was slightly trembling, which was the relief after a narrow escape. "It's a pity for that Luciano kid." I remembered again how my mother forced back her tears and hesitated to speak when I woke up in the previous life, as well as the chaotic and shrill cries at the wedding scene. All of it seemed like a lifetime ago. How nice it was. I still had a chance to start over. I endured the pain and limped to the door of the emergency room. Then I heard the overwhelming cries of Luciano's family members. "No amputation. How could there be an amputation? Luciano is so proud. How could he accept this?" It was Anshin's crying voice. But no matter how much Luciano's family members begged and cried, the doctor still shook his head regretfully. "It's a comminuted fracture and there's still a blood clot in the patient's brain. He's in a very dangerous situation now. If we don't operate immediately, we might miss the best treatment opportunity." Finally, Luciano still had his leg amputated. It's just that he was even a bit more miserable than I used to be. His left leg was amputated completely from below the hip. The doctor also said that since the blood clot in his brain hadn't been completely removed, Luciano had a high possibility of going blind. In the next 2 days, I often went to see Luciano. The person on the bed was pale and motionless. He didn't look like the once high-spirited and arrogant Luciano at all. I silently stayed in the ward, insisting on waiting for him to wake up. I didn't even care about my own injuries. In the eyes of others, it was obvious that I was deeply in love with Luciano. Even Anshin advised me to go back and have a good rest. I stubbornly shook my head and squeezed out a few tears. "I'm okay. I want to see Luciano wake up. I'm afraid he'll be sad. Actually, I just wanted to see Luciano wake up with my own eyes. And then tell him personally, 'You look so disgusting in your disabled state.' The favored son of heaven who was always the center of attention. What would his reaction be if he knew that he not only had his limb amputated but also went blind? Until the fifth day, Luciano finally woke up. As soon as I entered the room, I saw the mess all over the floor. Presumably, it must be Luciano's masterpiece. The nurse was cleaning up the fragments on the floor. Ancien looked worried, her eyes red and swollen, clearly having just cried. Although Luciano was weak just after waking up, he still had the energy to lose his temper. It seemed that he hadn't reached the point of breaking down yet. I had underestimated him. Luciano lay on the bed blankly, his eyes lifeless. Like a lifeless rag doll, just as the doctor had said. Because of the pressure from the blood clot in his brain, Luciano lost his sight. But it was only temporary. Once his condition stabilized and the blood clot in his brain was removed, he would be able to see again. Ancien pointed at Luciano's leg and then shook her head at me. I suddenly realized that Luciano didn't know that his leg was gone. But how could I let him have his way? Of course, I pretended not to see it. I quickly walked to Luciano's side and held his hand tightly. I burst into tears. Luciano, cheer up. Without legs, we can still put on prosthetic limbs and still be able to ride horses and race cars. I knew that Luciano would break down, but I didn't expect him to go crazy like this. He suddenly grasped my hand tightly, his voice strained. What did you say? Say it again. I was startled, but I couldn't break free no matter what. I endured the pain in my hand and continued to comfort him. Luciano, if you want to cry, just cry. I'll always be with you. Luciano, like a madman, pulled out the needle on his hand and struggled to sit up to touch his leg, but he touched nothing. He was stunned at first and then his whole body began to tremble. He roared and punched his right leg hard, the veins on his hand bulging. Ancien cried and was about to pull Luciano, but was pushed away by Luciano. Only his hoarse low growl was left in the ward. Get out. All of you get out. After a long while, Luciano seemed to be tired. He let go dejectedly, his expression sad. With a low sobbing sound, he was like a trapped beast. I stood aside, sneering coldly as tears streamed down my face. But I wasn't mourning for Luciano. It was just as if I saw myself in the past again. I in my previous life, when I first learned that I had to have my leg amputated, I was equally desperate. I had studied ballet for 18 years. Even my teacher said that I was born to be the brightest star on the stage. But then I lost my leg, and my dream was shattered. I'll always remember those darkest days. I locked myself in my room all day long, unwilling to see anyone. I just wanted to hide in a corner where there was no one around. Anything could touch my sensitive nerves. At one point, I couldn't help self-harming and even thought about committing suicide. It was Luciano who broke down the locked door and carried me out of the pool of blood. He held me tightly in his arms and gently kissed my cheek, saying, Nina, I'm sorry. I didn't protect you well. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Please don't hurt yourself. Luciano convinced my parents and took me to his apartment. He also vowed to take care of me for the rest of my life. But in the end it all turned out to be a scam. After we got engaged, Luciano took advantage of the resources of the Nina family, which were superior to those of the Luciano family, and rapidly expanded the business territory of the Luciano family group. In just 3 years, the Luciano family group became one of the top enterprises in Kyoto, leaving the Nina family group far behind. He even deliberately set obstacles for the Nina family group in a land bidding and suppressed the Nina family group both openly and secretly. I once heard my mother mention it euphemistically. But at that time, I was too dependent on Luciano and didn't realize at all what the person I loved most was plotting. It wasn't until I saw those chat records with my own eyes that I realized how terribly wrong I had been. Looking at Luciano, who was in agony on the bed, an idea suddenly came to my mind. Since I was reborn, I would repay Luciano for everything he had done to me. He didn't like me, right? Then I would stay by his side on purpose. First, let him rely on me and fall in love with me step by step until he couldn't live without me, and then throw him into hell mercilessly. So, I bent down and hugged the sobbing Luciano. In the shocked eyes of Mrs. Shen, I promised word by word, Luciano, don't be afraid. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Even if you lose a leg, I'll be with you. In this way, I took the initiative to take on the important task of taking care of Luciano. I went to his apartment every day regardless of wind or rain. In the eyes of people in the circle, I loved Luciano to the extreme. Even Luciano thought so. After all, who could bear to stake their future on a disabled person? After my mother learned that I had offered to take care of Luciano on my own initiative, she almost locked me up. Her eyes were full of confusion when she looked at me. Mom knows you like that boy, but his accident has nothing to do with you. Why do you have to sacrifice your whole life? I remembered Luciano's cold questioning again. Nina, go and ask your parents. Ask them how they forced me. I didn't know what means my parents had used to make Luciano compromise. No matter how reluctant he was. He also tried his best to suppress his disgust and took care of me for 3 years. But there would be no answer to all this anymore. After I assured her that I was sober-minded, my mother finally compromised. Just like I was in the past, Luciano became irritable and short-tempered after the amputation. Because he couldn't see, he became more sensitive and suspicious. Either he disliked that the footsteps of the nurse were too loud, or he thought the food cooked by the chef was not delicious. In just half a month, he had changed several nurses. The things on the bedside had been smashed countless times. No one could soothe Luciano except me, because only I knew Luciano's pride. I knew what he needed and where he was most sensitive. When he unconsciously pursed his lips, I would promptly pour him a cup of hot water. When he repeatedly turned over on his side, I would help him to the bathroom. Luciano didn't like the food cooked by the chef, but he liked the soup I made. No one knew how many times I had made soup for Luciano in those 3 years in my previous life. I knew his taste very well. In less than a month, all the servants and nurses were driven out of the room by Luciano. Since then, only I could enter his room. Sometimes Luciano would also show a confused look. Nina, you're so kind to me, but Nina, I don't deserve you at all now. You really don't have to. I knew that Luciano had begun to rely on me, but it was far from enough for what I wanted. I put my index finger to his lips and said softly, I know everything. I just feel so sorry for you. As long as you can get better, I don't care about anything. Luciano didn't say anything more, but there was a bit more tenderness in his eyes. With my considerate care, Luciano's temper gradually improved. The number of times he smashed things decreased a lot. Luciano was obviously relying on me more and more, but I knew that Luciano hadn't completely fallen in love with me yet. Because he had always had a first love in his heart. As his body recovered, the blood clot in Luciano's brain could also be removed. The Luciano family invited top domestic surgical experts to perform the operation on Luciano. The operation was very successful. On the day when the gauze was removed, Luciano was obviously in high spirits. His eyes kept looking towards the door. I knew who he was waiting for. After Luciano had looked countless times, a figure in white finally appeared. Rosie was a famous talented girl in the dance department of a university and also my roommate. Many people called us the two beauties in the dance department of a university. She had an elegant figure and excellent dancing skills. In our sophomore year, Luciano almost fell in love with Rosie at first sight. Since then, whenever Luciano came to see me, he was actually doing it for Rosie. I had liked Luciano for 10 years. It would be a lie to say that I wasn't sad, but Luciano had never rejected me, yet he wouldn't give me a positive response either. I knew that I had lost completely and had already quietly withdrawn, but it seemed that they hadn't been together. I hadn't been jealous of Rosie originally. It was just the chat records I found in Luciano's phone on the eve of the wedding. Luciano, I've missed you a lot in these 3 years. Me too. I'm so sorry that I didn't accept you when you liked me. Now I've realized that you're the only one I truly love. Luciano, if I came back to disrupt your wedding, would you go with me? I would. Every day after being reborn, whenever I thought of those words, I still felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to see if Rosie, who could disrupt the wedding in public in the previous life, would still love Luciano. So, when Rosie was looking at Luciano with teary eyes full of pity, I brought the tools for changing the dressing. Luciano, it's time to change the dressing. The ambiguous atmosphere came to an abrupt end, the air froze for a moment. I was stunned for a moment and stood there awkwardly. Did I come at a bad time? But the doctor said that the dressing should be changed at this time every day. It's okay, Nina. Give it to me. I can take care of Luciano, Rosie said as she took the things from my hand and prepared to change the dressing for Luciano. Facing Rosie's initiative, of course I was happy to see it happen. I was just afraid that she wouldn't see this scene. When Rosie carefully removed the gauze on Luciano's leg, she was obviously shocked that Luciano's left leg had been amputated from the thigh. And the amputated part, because it was still healing, had a raised and hideous wound. The scar on it was like a wild beast, spreading wantonly on the skin, making people shudder. With a clang, the medicine bottle in Rosie's hand fell to the ground and shattered, and she also took a half step back. Obviously, the expression on her face was shocked and frightened. The atmosphere froze again, and the room was so quiet that everyone's breathing could be heard. Luciano. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Rosie's voice trembled a bit. And Luciano's eyes were full of hurt and disappointment. You two talk. I'll go out first. Not wanting to get involved in their entanglement, I wisely left the ward. I heard Luciano's hoarse questioning voice. Are you so afraid of me? Am I that scary? Luciano. I really didn't mean it. Rosie spoke haltingly, with a suppressed cry in her voice. Soon, there was the sound of things being thrown inside. I couldn't help sneering. Luciano was really enraged again. But it seemed that he could do nothing except smash things to vent his anger. Then came Luciano's angry roar. Get out of here. Go as far away as you can and never come back. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Rosie ran out of the room crying. She cried as she ran. When she passed by me, she gave me a fierce glare without even looking back. The flowers sent by Rosie were all thrown out by Luciano. They almost hit me in the face. I slightly curled the corners of my mouth. So, in the face of disability, the so-called true love was nothing more than this. Because of Rosie's stimulation, Luciano's emotion, which had just stabilized with difficulty, began to collapse again. He became extremely furious again. He smashed things again and even cursed. When Luciano smashed his mobile phone again, I finally saw a hint of impatience on Mrs. Luciano's face. Well, the Luciano family didn't have only Luciano as a son. Since Luciano became disabled, Mr. Shen had only visited him once. I could tell that Mr. Shen had already given up on his son Luciano. Mrs. Luciano had also been extremely busy recently. She not only had to deal with the women outside and the illegitimate children but also had to manage the company's affairs, plus Luciano's moody behavior. Probably no one could bear it for too long. Mrs. Luciano didn't come to see Luciano every day either. She only came once in a while. Luciano probably also noticed the change of his mother. He got angry even more often. So, every time Luciano got angry, I would stand silently behind the door and watch. Because he didn't allow outsiders to approach, the servants didn't dare to come over either. When he shouted that he wanted to drink water, I pretended not to hear. When he shouted several times and was furious, I would then cleverly show up. Then I would tightly hold his hand and gently comfort him. Luciano, I'm sorry. I was making soup just now and didn't hear you calling me. I'll come as soon as possible next time. Don't be angry. It's not good for your health. When Luciano was furious, he even glared at me angrily. I could only turn around stubbornly and wipe my tears aggrievedly. If you really hate me that much, I can leave. Luciano finally showed a panicked expression. He tightly held my hand, looking humble and vulnerable. Nina, don't go. I only have you left. Time passed like this. Gradually, I knew that Luciano couldn't live without me anymore. Luciano's body was gradually recovering. And I was admitted to the ballet troupe in City A as I had wished. 3 years later, I stood on the familiar stage once again. I was almost moved to tears. Accompanied by the lively music, I stretched my insteps, relaxed my shoulders and danced like a butterfly fluttering gracefully. When I stretched my arms upward, it seemed that I could touch the brilliant starry sky with just a stretch of my hand. With every jump and spin, I could feel a continuous stream of strength pouring into my heart. Because of my excellent performance, the troop leader specially recommended me to participate in a ballet competition. In order to practice dancing better, I went to Luciano's apartment less and less often. The nanny called me several times. It was not until I finally found time to go to the apartment that the nanny heaved a sigh of relief. "Nina, you're finally here." The young master lost his temper again, and we couldn't persuade him at all. As soon as I entered the door, I saw Luciano's expressionless face. As soon as he opened his mouth, he began to rebuke me. "What have you been busy with lately? Why haven't you come to see me?" I secretly raised my eyebrows. The always proud Luciano was just like this. I gave Luciano a smile and said happily, "Before graduation, I applied for the ballet troupe in City A, and now I've been admitted. Moreover, the troupe leader specially asked me to represent the troupe in the competition." I deliberately ignored Luciano's increasingly gloomy face and instead became happier as I talked. "Nina, that's enough." I covered my lips, pretending that I had accidentally let it slip. Then I looked at Luciano's empty left leg. I lowered my head, feeling very sorry. "Luciano, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." I paused for a moment and then continued, "I'm just so happy. I've been practicing dancing recently and neglected you. After I finish the competition, I will surely." Before I could finish my words, Luciano punched the table. "You just saw that my leg is useless and deliberately provoked me, didn't you?" He sneered with the corners of his mouth pulled, murmuring self-mockingly, "Even you think I'm a cripple." I was so frightened by Luciano that I took half a step back, feeling flustered for a moment. I wanted to hug him but I didn't dare to. I really didn't mean it. "Luciano, if you don't like me, I'll leave now." I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and turned to go out. But behind me came the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. It seemed that Luciano wanted to pull me and in a hurry, he fell off the bed. Looking at the extremely embarrassed Luciano, I suddenly remembered the words he had once used to ridicule me. "Nina limping around really looks like a clown. How can I hold back from laughing out loud? Ha ha ha." He had once told others my pain as a joke. Perhaps there was divine justice. Now the person who looked like a clown was Luciano. If possible, I really wanted to take a picture of this scene and let Luciano see his own clownish appearance himself. Since that day, Luciano had become more and more clingy. It seemed that he was afraid of my leaving. Luciano would call me countless times every day. I was busy practicing dancing and often ignored him. He would send a long string of WeChat messages. "Nina, will you come to see me today? Nina, I want to eat the pork rib soup you made. The nanny's cooking isn't as delicious as yours." I didn't reply and just put my phone on silent. The members of the troupe teased me. "Did you quarrel with your boyfriend?" I smiled and shook my head. "He's not my boyfriend. He's just someone who lacks love and keeps pestering me." I suddenly found that the tactic of keeping a distance was really effective on Luciano. His first love left him, and his parents abandoned him. Luciano became an unwanted burden. And obviously, I had become the most important spiritual support beside Luciano. Looking at his appearance of being worried about gains and losses and heavily dependent on me, I knew that my plan had succeeded. As long as I mentioned leaving, he would try to keep me like crazy. For men, what they can't get is always the best. However, I felt really good when I tortured Luciano from time to time. Soon, Luciano's birthday was coming. Since the accident happened to Luciano, he was very afraid of seeing outsiders. He hadn't even contacted his childhood friends who grew up with him. I contacted his childhood friends a week in advance and prepared a big gift for him together. On the morning of his birthday, several of his childhood friends came early. They sent a huge bouquet of flowers. His closest attendant even specially prepared a limited edition sports car, wanting to give Luciano a surprise. When they entered the door, Luciano was practicing walking with a crutch. "Luciano, look what we've prepared for you. The latest model of supercar." At the moment when our eyes met, I clearly saw the shock in everyone's eyes. It seemed that the outside world didn't yet know the news that the young master of the Luciano family had become disabled. Everyone stammered, "Luciano, you..." And Luciano's face turned livid, and his eyes were mixed with embarrassment and distress. Who could have thought that the once favored son like Luciano would become like this now? Because of that car accident, what Luciano couldn't bear to hear the most now was anything about cars. And the arrival of his childhood friends who used to race cars with him undoubtedly added salt to his wounds. He clenched his fists tightly, and the veins on his hands were clearly visible. When he saw the sports car key in his childhood friend's hand, he almost roared out, "Who asked you to come? Who asked you to come? All of you, get the hell out of here." Alas, such a nice birthday banquet was ruined just like that. I saw Luciano's childhood friends out. And I apologized embarrassedly. "Don't take it to heart. Luciano just can't accept it yet." Everyone expressed their understanding and then left with a look of pity. As soon as I returned to the room, I met Luciano's gloomy expression. He gritted his teeth and asked me, "Nina, you did it on purpose, didn't you? You deliberately let them come to laugh at me?" I looked down at him condescendingly and didn't say anything. In an instant, Luciano's expression was filled with infinite sadness. He looked at me almost pleadingly. "Why did you do this? I was already prepared to spend my whole life with you. I love you so much." I couldn't help laughing out loud. In my previous life, when I needed his love the most, he thought I was extremely disgusting. Every time we were affectionate, he would complain in the group, "It's so disgusting. I really don't want to touch her. When will this end?" And now that he was the one with a broken leg, he was ready to spend his whole life with me? Saying he loved me? What a joke. I don't need such cheap love. But now it was my turn to think he was disgusting. So, I read the words I had prepared long ago to him word by word. "Guys, who can understand? Every time I see her limping around, I feel like vomiting. If I had known that I would spend my whole life with someone I don't love, I would rather have been the one who had my leg amputated. I really want to run away from the wedding." Looking at Luciano's increasingly confused face, I walked a few steps closer and smiled as I leaned close to his ear. "Well, does it hurt to be trampled on like this? But this is how you treated me in the previous life. As a cripple, why do you think I'll love you wholeheartedly?" Luciano seemed to remember something. He reached out and hugged his head tightly. Because of the intense pain, he fell to the ground again, rolling around constantly and moaning in pain. Dense cold sweat oozed out on his forehead. I watched all this indifferently, feeling extremely relieved in my heart. No one knew how many nightmares I had had in these days since I was reborn. In the dreams, Luciano seemed to love me dearly on the surface, but behind my back, he cruelly pushed me into the abyss. Countless nights when I woke up from the dreams, I would be startled for a long time. I was afraid that being reborn was just a dream. When I woke up, I would be that Nina who was abandoned at the wedding again. I stared straight at his broken leg and said with extreme sarcasm, "Luciano, you look so disgusting without a leg." Finally, Luciano on the ground completely broke down. He stared at me fixedly, his eyes scarlet. A low growl came from his throat. He looked extremely pitiful. I didn't care about him anymore. I opened the door and turned to leave. All that was left in my ears was his humble begging, "Nina, don't go, please." I completely broke up with Luciano. I finally didn't have to go to his apartment anymore. I just focused on preparing for the ballet competition. Within a few days, the news that the young master of the Luciano family had become a cripple spread throughout the whole circle. It was Luciano's mother who called me several times. Every time, she begged me to go and see Luciano. I refused several times, but Luciano's mother still didn't give up. "Nina, please go and see Luciano. He won't listen to what we say. Only when you're there can he feel better. For the sake of the fact that I've been nice to you over the years, please find time to come to the hospital to see him." After hanging up the phone, I suddenly found it very funny. I had treated Luciano like that, yet he still wanted me to go and see him? Wasn't he afraid that I would say something to stimulate him again? In order to focus on preparing for the competition, I simply chose to ignore it. I had practiced day and night these days. No one knew how much sweat I had shed. Only I knew it myself. That stage, I had been longing for it for 3 years. Each of my movements was extremely elegant, whether spinning or jumping, it moved the audience to tears. Now that I finally had the chance to stand on it again, I would definitely seize the opportunity. On the day of the competition, I won with an absolute advantage. The applause from the audience was thunderous, making my eardrums buzz. On the stage, I had tears in my eyes, and the tears were swirling in my eye sockets. At that moment, I forgot about hatred and pain. I was just the brightest white swan on the stage. It seemed that a big stone in my heart had finally fallen to the ground. At the end of the competition, I received a call from Luciano. His voice on the phone was gentle, and there was even a faint smile. "Nina, congratulations." "Thank you." In a daze, I heard Luciano take a deep breath. "Nina, I've remembered everything that happened before. I'm sorry for you. I toyed with your feelings. It's right for you to hate me, but I really didn't want you to die." I turned my head to look at the flashing neon lights and didn't reply. "Nina, besides hatred, do you have even a little bit of—" "No." I resolutely interrupted Luciano's words. "Some things are doomed to be irreversible from the very beginning." There was a short silence on the other end of the phone. After a while, I heard him say, "Well? I know." The next time I saw Luciano was in the corridor of the hospital. Luciano in the wheelchair looked pale and tired. The once vibrant young man seemed to have turned into an old man in his twilight years. I heard from the nurse taking care of him that Luciano had refused treatment and the wounds from the car accident had relapsed. Because Luciano had become a disabled person, in just half a year, the illegitimate son of the Luciano family was brought back openly and took over the business of the Luciano family as a matter of course. Luciano's mother was so angry that she was hospitalized, and there was chaos within the Luciano family. However, Luciano didn't seem to want to fight for anything at all. He stayed in his apartment day after day, spending all day staring blankly at the crabapple flowers in the yard. When our eyes met, Luciano was clearly stunned for a moment. There was an unmistakable glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Nina, did you come to see me?" Right after asking that, Luciano smiled self-deprecatingly. "How could that be? You hate me so much." He looked at me cautiously. "Nina, if there is an afterlife, will you forgive me?" I smiled at him indifferently. "Luciano, everything is in the past. I don't hate you anymore. But I don't want to forgive you either." As soon as I finished speaking, that glimmer of light in Luciano's eyes finally disappeared and then became dim. Although I didn't hate him anymore, I could never forget the anger I felt at the moment when I learned the truth. I could stop hating, but I wouldn't forgive. The last news I heard about Luciano was his death. Luciano, the heir of the Luciano family, committed suicide at 3 o'clock in the morning in his private apartment in Haitang Bay. He died by cutting his wrists. There was also a bunch of bright crabapple flowers beside him when he died. Crabapple flowers are my favorite. In the previous life, in order to make me happy, Luciano planted the whole garden with crabapple flowers. Maybe Luciano really liked me back then. The wind outside the window blew gently, and in that moment of a slight stir in my heart, I seemed to see that boy I had truly loved again. When I won a prize in a competition, he would present me with a bunch of flowers. He would take me to eat, drink, and have fun to celebrate for the whole night. When I got scolded for my poor exam results, he would take the initiative to drag me to the library to make up for the lessons. When he was so angry with me that he couldn't say a word, he would helplessly and affectionately knock on my forehead. I would also squeeze through the crowded crowd, foolishly hugging his schoolbag and watching him play a ball game. Then we would ride bicycles home together in the afterglow of the setting sun. At that time, I thought we would be like this forever. I didn't know that we would be hit hard by reality. It was a long time later that I learned the flower language of crabapple flowers. Bitter lovesickness, hopeless love, just like Luciano and me. When I loved him, he didn't care at all. When he finally turned around, I didn't want to look back anymore. The end.